I bought this 100% portable PlayStation 2 from Aliexpress, and in this video, we'll take an in-depth look at it and see if it was worth the $500 I paid for it. So here's the box, and of course, the first thing you notice on these packages from Aliexpress, it says made in China all over it. So let me know down below at the end of the video how many times you count made in China. I'm gonna guess 15, but might be more or less. Now let's go ahead and open it up. All right, good old styrofoam everywhere. Got this little package right here, which I'm assuming is the console itself, and then here, I'm assuming is the power brick. Of course, a bunch of made in China's on it. Now let's open them up. We got our power brick here. Now let's go ahead and open this portable up. Dun, 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 dun. Holy crap, this is mad. Oh my goodness. Dude, this thing is humongous. Oh my gosh. Dude. I don't even, this is a mammoth. It's bigger than like a fat PS2. Holy crap, this thing is huge. I'm gonna have to give you guys some size comparisons. Obviously on the screen, it doesn't look that big, but this thing is an absolute beast. It's humongous. Oh my gosh. So I went and gathered a bunch of stuff to compare this thing to, because this thing is an absolute beast, and it's got so many just weird aspects that need to be compared. So first of all, we're gonna weigh this thing and just see how heavy it is. All right, so this thing it's almost 2 pounds, and now just for a comparison, I'll weigh the PS Vita. PS Vita is almost 10 ounces, so this thing is 3 times as heavy as the PS Vita. Just absolutely insane. So next we need to pull out a measuring tape. So we got 12 inches long, and it is almost 6 inches tall. Just absolute mammoth. And then next up, we got another PS2 Portable that I bought a while back that you guys probably have seen before. This thing was huge back then, but like, look in comparison, look how much bigger this one is than the old one. That's crazy. And then of course the PS Vita, which this thing is clearly modeled after, it's tiny in comparison. Like, you got the same stick placements, the same buttons and directional placements, same start and select. There's also a button over here, same as the Vita, but I'll have to take the made in China sticker off so we can see it better. But it's just wild. And then of course these thumbsticks here are the same as the DualShock 4. So as you can see, look exactly the same. The D-pad actually looks the same as the DualShock 4 as well. Now I'm not sure about these buttons, because these are very deep buttons. I don't even know where those came from. I don't know if they came from a controller or if they custom made them. And then last but not least, we have to compare it to a PS2 Slim. So this thing is about the size of a PS2 Slim. Of course, it's actually fatter than a PS2 Slim, which is pretty skinny. This thing is not skinny at all. And oh, it's got some interesting ports on it. So let's kind of take a closer look at this portable in question now, because it's man, this is the funniest one yet. This is wild. So like, first of all, this thing's not even really playable. Like, it's absolutely massive in my hands. I can barely hold it. But clearly on the front, you got your D-pad, your buttons, you got your 2 joysticks, you got your select and start. We got a made in China sticker on the bottom as well. And then we actually have an Ethernet jack. We have our optical out. We also have an AV out, so that's actually pretty cool. I've not seen that on another console. We have our power jack and our power switch, and then, oh, I'm not actually sure. Oh, that's for auxiliary, so you can, I guess, plug in some headphones if you want to. Flipping over to the top, we've got USB input. We also have an SD card. Oh, so the SD card is actually flush with the system this time. So every other console I've purchased from AliExpress, the SD card stuck out like half an inch, so that's actually kind of nice. And then of course you can see some ventilation here for all the heat coming out. You've got a TV button, an M for menu, minus and plus, which is probably for the volume. And of course, it's got the same design as a PS Vita on the back, exactly the same. I mean, we know what they were modeling after. So obviously it's not touch sensitive like the PS Vita, but it still just looks exactly the same. And yeah, this thing is wild. And the first thing I've actually noticed is that I think the left trigger is messed up. It doesn't click that great. I don't think it's messed up, actually. I think it's just not great. There's also a few weird things in the description of this product, so let me go ahead and show you that stuff as well. So first thing you'll notice is this is real hardware, so it has a PS2 motherboard in it, not a Raspberry Pi or emulation or anything. Also has an 80-inch screen, lasts for 3 hours, has a 32G card, have game, has an 8M memory card, PS2 AV output to the TV like we saw, and it actually says it supports PS3 and PS4 wireless controllers. Not quite sure how, but I guess we'll try to test that out. Also says you can play GBA Arcade and other simulators. So not sure what they got on here, but let's check it out now. So I took off the made in China sticker down here, and it reveals a nice little PlayStation logo button. And then up at the top, I don't think I really mentioned it, but we got 3D printed trigger buttons, which are not the best, but they feel okay. And then obviously the entire thing is 3D printed. It doesn't look great, but it's, you know, it could be worse, but it could be a lot better. But let's go ahead and turn this thing on. So first of all, we need to flick this switch on, and it should turn the entire system on. Cool, so we have a light here. And if we press this PlayStation button right here, it should turn the PS2 on. Hopefully. We should boot into probably OPL, but we'll see. All right, cool. So we are on OPL now, and the first thing I noticed is this screen is actually really nice. So as you can see, I'm like changing the viewing angle for you guys, and it's not changing how it looks. It looks very good. It's definitely the best screen of the PS2 portables I've had so far. And as you can see, we've already got some games preloaded up. So these are all just loaded up on this SD card. So if you don't know what LPL is, it's essentially a way that you can play games off of like an SD card, hard drive, USB stick, that sort of thing, instead of a disk drive. Because obviously there's no disk drive here. If there was, this thing would be even larger, which would be absolutely unusable. But we got some games here like Call of Duty 2, Gran Turismo 3, King of Fighters Collection, King of Fighters 98, I think. It's always funny how on these games they like to do a lot of shorthand stuff. So if you don't know the shorthand for a lot of these games, you can't figure them out because they're just like abbreviated to 4 letters. But let's go ahead and try out one of these games. Actually, let's explore a little bit. So we got options here. You can see your game settings, cheat settings. This is normal stuff for OPL. If you press the start button, you can also see some other stuff like settings, display settings. I don't know if any of you guys want to see this, but I'll go to a couple of these screens so you guys can take a look if you want to. But yeah, just a few things to note there. And scrolling down, also in control settings, I also see that there's a pad emulator mode for DualShock 3 and 4. So I actually wonder if that's what they're referring to in the description where it says you can use DualShock 3 or 4 on this. Maybe that's just a OPL thing. I'm not too familiar with OPL, but let's try out a game. So we'll try Gran Turismo 3 because most people are familiar with that game. We'll boot it up and see how it plays and see if it runs well. Ooh, that's a little rough. So we're on the startup screen and it's skipping a lot. Like you can... Just listening to that audio, you can tell it's skipping a lot. So that's one of the issues with OPL, specifically when you're running games off of a USB stick or memory card, because the memory card, basically the speeds that the PS2 supports are so slow that it can't load what it needs to fast enough. So the disc is actually faster, or actually a better experience in this case on real hardware. Just something to point out, and we'll see if the game runs the same. And generally, it's an issue with like loading screens and like cutscenes, that sort of thing. But once you load up, it'll probably work okay. But we'll find out here. All right, so on the main screen, and this screen is running fine. No dropped frames or anything. We'll just do easy to keep it easy for now. We'll go to the Smoky Mountain, and we're just gonna do a little bit of racing here to see how it feels. And upon initial startup here, it's also jumping around a little bit, but now it's getting better. I imagine once we start, it's feeling better now already. Oh yeah, this is running well now. We're in a kind of like a dark environment, so it's hard to see. That's just because of the race I'm doing. It's like dark outside. I'll just race for a little bit and see how it feels. So I'm playing this game, and I thought I had rumble for a second because I got really close to a wall, and then I hit it, and then the console started vibrating a little bit, and then I figured out it was just the fan spinning up inside of the PS2. Would have been cool to have rumble in here, but I don't think that would have been good for the insides of the PS2 with the motherboard and everything in there. Probably would not have been a good idea. I'm on lap number 2. The buttons feel great. No issues so far. They're all responsive. Now the left analog stick seems a little bit touchy. I'm not sure if that's because of the analog stick or just because I'm not used to playing Gran Turismo 3 on the PS2. Haven't played this game in forever. Or in fact, any racing game on the PS2 in forever. But other than that, things feel good. Start button works. All these buttons work. Triggers work. They don't feel the best, but they are functional, and they're not terrible, honestly. Now, fitting this thing in my hands is not quite as bad as I thought it would be. If you have really small hands, this thing's gonna be way too big. You're not gonna be able to hold it. But with decent sized hands, it's not too bad. You kind of gotta like find a little medium grip where you can reach the analog sticks and the buttons and the triggers. So it's kind of right here for me. It's not the most comfortable thing, but honestly, it's not terrible either. All right, so that's working with no problem. I want to go back to the PS2 menu, or the OPL menu. I think if you press the PS2 button right here, the PlayStation button, it'll just reset the console, so it should boot us back into OPL, and I'll see what other games we have on here already. And by the way, all you got to do is load an ISO file onto the SD card, and you can play more games off of here. They already got a bunch of games, so I'm just gonna play the ones they have here. We'll do Call of Duty 2. So something else I haven't really talked about much. We got 4 buttons up here. We got TV button, which changes your input. We're not gonna change the input right now because we only have 1 input from the PS2. We got the M button for menu, so when you press that, you got like brightness, backlight, contrast, all that good stuff. And of course, these minus and plus buttons are for the volume. So pretty basic. And yeah, we're playing some Call of Duty 2 now. Yeah, so playing Call of Duty 2 for a few minutes works fine, no issues at all. The only thing is that it's definitely a little bit harder to play first-person shooter games with this control layout just because you have to stretch so far from your analog sticks to your triggers. So not the best. I'm honestly not that great at FPS games in the first place, so not exactly showing the best example. But it's not something you're going to want to buy if you want to play first-person shooter games intensely. But it's definitely a cool like novelty device, and it's just like it's such an interesting device. Like I don't even know who came up with this design. Like, can you imagine, like I say this in every video now, but can you imagine being the guy that designs this and your boss comes up to you and says, we need to make a portable PS2 that looks just like a PS Vita, but is also absolutely massive in the hands and unusable in the hands. But I don't know, it's wild. Now my favorite part of these videos is when I open up this console and see what they did inside, because they always do some weird stuff. So let's go ahead and open this bad boy up. And I also want to mention that I did try out the AV port, AV out, works great, no issues at all, no lag. So that's actually a pretty cool feature. Time for the big reveal. Let's see which way this opens up. And oh, it's actually feels a little bit cleaner than the other ones. Actually, that looks a whole lot better than the other ones I bought. Wow, I am impressed. So first of all, your first thing you'll notice is these 3D printed buttons kind of fall out, which is typical. That's just how they're mounted in there. Now we actually have 4 screws holding down the motherboard. That is impressive. I have not seen that on the other ones. The other ones use like 1 screw and it just flaps around in the console, so that's good. We've got batteries on this side, batteries on that side. Got a little 3D printed flap holding them down. And then you've got of course, your PS2 motherboard in here, and you got your fan that blows it out the top. Then down here, you have your SD card wired into this board, which I believe connects up to your memory card. This is just a memory card stripped down a little bit. And then down here, we have our power circuit to charge this thing up. And now looking at the other half, we've got our massive screen with our screen motherboard, and then we have a bunch of custom PCBs that control the the inputs from the analog sticks, the buttons, the triggers, all that good stuff. And then last but not least, you got these 4 buttons up here which wire straight into the screen. And one other thing down here, for the speakers, it looks like you're using an amplifier on this board down here which wires up to the 2 speakers. So I gotta say, I think this one looks a whole lot cleaner inside. Most of the wires are routed pretty well. Everything is strapped down. I don't see any random loose wires like I've seen on the other PS2 consoles. The other ones I've seen, I've had like random wires right here touching the chips and stuff and messing things up. So this one doesn't look nearly that bad. It actually looks pretty clean, and it doesn't smell like burnt flux like the other ones do. So that's obviously a good thing as well. And last but not least, I got to give this console a rating because that's what I do for all the custom consoles now. So there's 3 categories. There's usability, coolness, and execution. So first of all, coolness, I'm gonna give it a 7 out of 10 because it's a neat product. It's such an interesting idea to combine the Vita, the DualShock 4, and a PS2 into portable form. Just a cool idea. So I'm giving that a 7 out of 10. Now usability, I'm going to give it a 3 out of 10, mostly because it's so large. It's hard to hold in your hands. It's not the most practical thing. So I'm giving it a 3 out of 10 for usability. And for execution, I'm going to give it a 7 out of 10 as well because it actually works pretty well. I had no issues. Everything inside looks a whole lot cleaner than it has in the past. So I'm going to give them a 7 out of 10 on this one. Now, last but not least, I'm going to add one more category, which is price for what you get. Now, we paid about $500 for this, and in terms of custom portable consoles, that's actually not too terrible. But of course, it's not a professional product. Most people are not going to pay $500 for something like this, so I'm going to give it a 4 out of 10. That's just how I feel about it. So let me know what you think down below.